What's up, people? My name is Shaggy, the opinionated hippie. This is my first video of 2023. We found out over the course of the holidays that we have friends who celebrate Christmas, Hanukkah, Festivus, Kwanzaa, Solstice, New Year's, of course. And then COVID hit our tiny little household. And though I did not get it, it did affect us for about a week and a half. And it was a rough time. But things are back to normal. We're back. And today we're talking about this release, Waka Wazoo, Frank Zappa's latest release. Came out right before Christmas, I think the 16th of December. This is a 5-disc box set, or at least the version I'm going to talk about that I have is the 5-disc version of it. And this is assorted material from 1972. We have essentially 2.5 discs of studio stuff, recordings that would eventually, material that would have, songs, alternate takes and alternate mixes of songs that would eventually end up on Waka Waka, the Petit Wazoo, some recording sessions with material that George Duke had written, using the same musicians that Frank was using for the Petit Wazoo and Waka Waka, plus a complete live show. More on that. It might not be a complete live show. But what appears to be a complete live show, their last live show of the Petit Wazoo tour from the fall of 72. And then the 5th disc is the Blu-ray audio versions of Waka Waka and Petit Wazoo. Before we get into this, let me share my biases with you. I recently reviewed the recent Zappa release, Zappa Eerie, and knew going into this, but then found out that my opinion of the November 12th show, the Fall 74 show in that box set, is a lot higher than other people's opinions. I don't think the Fall 74 band can do anything wrong. So even though we have an absolutely amazing earlier 74 show, the 10th anniversary tour, which is absolutely amazing, over the course of the last couple months, I think I actually like that Fall 74 show better. If you want to know why, listen to the Redunzel guitar solo and the complete mess that is. I think that is one of the best things ever. But I'm going to share my biases. So going into this, you know that, yes, I'm heavily biased to love this material. When I ranked the 55 albums that Frank released during his lifetime, I compiled the Joe's Garage into one, the Shut Up and Play Your Guitar into one, the London Symphony Orchestra into one review. So really there's about 60 releases. The Petit Wazoo album came in at number 4. And the Waka Waka album came in at number 14. So both really highly rated albums that I think are almost perfect. Zappa Eerie, I think I put up at like 3, so Wazoo might be at 4 now. And then the Fillmore 71 release, I put, oh no, we're talking other stuff. Yeah, no, this wouldn't change. 4 and 14 wouldn't change. When I did the things that were released after Zappa passed away, the live material, the concert, the Boston concert from the Wazoo tour came in at number 6. The 2 releases documenting the Petit Wazoo tour came in at 11 and 12, mainly because they weren't complete shows. And they were just, I'm a big fan of complete shows. They came in at 11 and 12. Since then, Zappa Eerie has come above Wazoo, so Wazoo's now at 7. And then I put the Fillmore release show between the Little Dots, which was 11, Imaginary Diseases, which is 12. So those now would be 12 and 14, right? And then when I did the tours, the Petit Wazoo tour came in at 7, and the Petit Wazoo tour came at 17. Mainly 17 because of the limited, what we have is very limited as far as tapes. Only one show was apparently recorded. All that stuff. But anyways, I have videos for those if you want to know about those releases. But anyways, one of the reasons why this box set is so anticipated by so many people is, other than those albums and then in recent years, those live releases, we don't have a lot of material from this band or from this era. Of the songs that are from here, you essentially have 4 that were on Waka Waka, 5 on the Petit Wazoo. Only 2 of them made it past 1974 as far as being performed live. So for whatever reason, Frank abandoned this material in the live set. And essentially after 74, none of this stuff was performed until 1988 when he brought back Eat That Question in a very short, just sort of the main theme. You didn't get the solos because it would go into Black Napkins. And then he brought Big Swifty in a huge, beautiful monster version. But other than that, the stuff from these albums was really only performed live a handful of times. Cletus Auritus Auritus, I believe, was performed once in 73, though I couldn't find my tape, so I couldn't verify that. But I think it was performed only once. Eat That Question, was performed a handful of times, made it to 74. Big Swifty a number of times, pretty popular in 73 and 74, but then abandoned until 88. For Calvin, a couple of times in 72. I don't think it might just be a one-shot deal was ever performed live. Waka Jawaka a couple times in 72. Cletus Auritus Auritus. Oh, no. Yeah, Cletus, I've already mentioned that. What else do we have from those albums? Where is the other disc? Your Mouth was never performed live to my understanding. Blessed Relief was never performed live. The Grand Wazoo Think It Over was a handful of times in 72. And then Waka Jawaka, I think I already said that. So we don't have a lot of other versions of these songs. So if you really like these songs, you kind of only had those albums and then those two other live releases, which for the most part were not these songs. So this is really just a really exciting release because we get to hear more of this stuff. And going into it, when I made my preview video, my hope was that it would be something along the lines of, we also have another Wazoo release, which was way down on the list, which I didn't even talk about, but it was a rehearsal. We have rehearsal tapes from the Wazoo tour, which were really fragmented and a lot of stopping and starting and poor sound quality. And my hope was this set was not going to be that, but was going to be more like the Hot Rat sessions, which were really just a bunch of live studio jam sessions of songs that we know and love from Hot Rats and Burnt Weenie Sandwich and other albums. And that's what this is. It is these songs in alternate, non-overdubbed, no edits, live studio jams. And it is stupidly fantastic. Like, it is absolutely a wonderful release. If there is an MVP for this, my MVP is, it is not Frank Zappa's guitar playing. In most of these releases, it is Zappa's guitar playing that is the thing that is like the thing that makes it better than anything else. The rhythm section, on no matter what we're listening to, whether it be the studio rhythm section of Ainsley Dunbar and Erroneous on bass, Ainsley Dunbar on drums, or whether it is Dave Parlato on bass and Jim Gordon on drums for the live stuff, the rhythm section is ridiculous. And the mixes on these especially give the drummers a little extra oomph and a little extra just like presence that I don't think the studio versions have of these albums. Same with the bass at times, especially in the studio stuff. Sometimes the bass is just ridiculous. They would be the runner-up for the MVPs, with maybe George Duke coming in like a close runner-up second. So if we had bronze and silver, it would be George Duke, bronze. Any rhythm section, depending on what we're listening to, in silver. Frank didn't make it. I don't think his guitar soloing is really the highlight of any of these tracks, to be honest with you. And when we get to the live stuff in particular, his Montana guitar solo and his Cosmic Debris guitar solo are just like barely even there as far as ideas go, as far as the effort it seems he puts into them. But the highlight, the MVP of this box set, hands down for me, is Sal Marquez on trumpet and, at least for Your Mouth, vocals. Just every time, I don't care whether he's soloing or he's just adding accents or he's just interjecting a couple short little bursts, the sound of his trumpet, his phrasing, the way he plays, the way he solos, to me, Sal Marquez is by far the MVP. And there are moments on here, such as in the Eat That Questions. Sal Marquez doesn't have a trumpet solo on the Eat That Questions studio version. He has trumpet solos on here that are just stupidly fantastic. And so many of these songs are really the song that we know and love, and then it's just a series of solos. It's like Duke gets a solo, Tony Duran will get a solo, the drummer will get a little bit, Marquez will get a little bit, Frank will get a little bit. Like, it's just solo heaven, and it is all just so good and so tasty and so delicious. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say about this. I'm going to go through the songs. I'm not done, but I think those were the general overviews. there are essentially 5 different things being offered here. The fifth, which I'm not going to talk about a lot because I'm not really, other people can talk about the way things sound. I'm here to talk about content. As someone who has traded tapes my whole life, I can tolerate bad sound quality. And so if something sounds as good as the Blu-ray versions of the Grand Wazoo and Waka Jawaka, I am just on cloud nine and I have no complaints. These albums pop in a way that I don't think they pop before. I think sort of there's a liveness to them that is much as highly regarded as those albums are already. Like these new remix versions, these other better sounding versions are just like take it to a whole other absolutely ridiculous level. So the Blu-ray stuff, I'm not going to talk about the albums I already have, is absolutely fantastic. That's sort of part 5. I'm going to do this in reverse order. So I like all of these, but the thing that is probably my fourth of the 4 themes remaining is the George Duke demo stuff. So after they recorded the stuff that would end up on Waka Jawaka and the Grand Wazoo, they recorded a bunch of George Duke songs that George would eventually, I think, re-record all of them for later albums that he would release, I think, in 74 and 75. Hiccups. Ooh. And these are just sound like really good, almost like they sound like Zappa because George, it's the Zappa band essentially, right? It's the same. I think it's Dunbar, Erroneous, Marquez, George Duke, obviously on keyboards. One of the songs has vocals. There's an Uncle Remus that's instrumental. Frank would take that, add lyrics to it, release it on apostrophe. But it sounds like once we get over sort of the main theme and we're into like the solo section or whatever it is, it sounds like 72 era Frank stuff. Like George's presence makes it sound like anything from 72 through 74. The rhythm section obviously is a Frank rhythm section. And so it feels just like that sort of very smooth and shiny mid 70s sort of R&B funk that's sort of like Steely Dan kind of lean toward. It kind of sounds like maybe late era Steely Dan, like Asia type stuff. Just that very clean, pristine sound, but it's got that funk bass with George Duke. And it's some pretty good stuff. It's essentially 4 songs. You get master versions of demos, and then you get session outtakes. So you get For Love, it's the one that has vocals. You get Psychosomatic Dung, which is probably the best of all of them. Uncle Remus instrumental. You get a song called Love, and then you get session outtakes from For Love, Psychosomatic Dung, and Love. And they're not bad. I mean, I enjoy listening to them. I thought that this would take me out of the rest of the album and it would just be something that didn't fit. But I actually do think it fits. And in the actual sequencing of the album, you have disc 1, disc 2 of all, which is all studio stuff. And then disc 3, the first about 2/3 of disc 3 are these George Duke tracks before you get to the final thing, which is the Petit Wazoo show. And I think it works. It doesn't really take me out of it. And it's a good listen. And so I like it. But the highlight, this is really the only time where I think Frank's guitar works best. There's sort of 2 things he does here. There are moments where it sounds like we already have a song and Frank's adding like overdubbing just guitar licks and riffs between like, the main melody or the main theme. And that doesn't work. That just seems like he's like invading somebody else's space. But there's a couple moments, I think it's in Psychosomatic Dung, when he has an actual like session in which, like a section in which to solo in. That works, and that works well. And I think some of Frank's better solos on here are in those cute little pockets that he has in these tracks. But it's my least favorite thing that this set is offering, but it's still it's really good. It's surprisingly better than I thought it would be. The next part that I would rank as my 3rd favorite part of this is mostly about 2/3 of disc 2, which are just alternate mixes of the tracks that are already been released. But I definitely think with these alternate mixes, the songs have a different feel. Certain parts work better in the alternate mixes than I think they do work on the original releases. But for the most part, they're not that different than the studio versions. but there's enough difference to make them enjoyable, and the sound is just so fantastic regardless that it's still good. If I had a complaint about this set, and it's nothing they can do about it, it's just a complaint that is nothing anybody can do about it, is that it just might be a one-shot deal, is the one song on here. We only get one version of it. It's an alternate mix version. It's pretty much the exact same performance as the original. And this was one song I was hoping we'd have like a 10-minute version of it. Where in that like guitar solo section, there's also like a trumpet solo and also a keyboard solo. And there are little moments where the mix definitely enhances different parts of the song, but it is the one song that doesn't really get any new really any new angles or anything new put in it, which is kind of disappointing because again, we don't have live versions of the song. So that's my one complaint. But we get alternate mixes of Big Swifty. I think the ending, I think the middle crazy section, especially the end when Frank comes in, sounds a little better in this mix than it does in the original. For Calvin and his next two Hitchhikers, I definitely think that middle section between the vocals and the ending part, that written part, that weird middle section when things get kind of floaty sounds better here, both in this alternate mix and on the first CD when there's an outtake version. I think that middle weird section just feels a little weirder and a little more strange, and I like that. Plus the other version doesn't have vocals, which I appreciate, just hearing it as an instrumental. But then we get it. Yes, we get a Big Swifty for Calvin. It just might be a one-shot deal. A Waka Jawaka, which I think has a longer drum solo at the end. Cletus Auritus Auritus, and then an Eat That Question alternate mix. But yeah, they're good. But again, and they're slightly different edits. I'm pretty sure in most of all of them, but other than like maybe Cletus, and it just might be a one-shot deal. Maybe Calvin's about the same too. But anyways, yeah. It's good stuff. Sounds fantastic. The songs do sound somewhat different because of the mix, but it's not like a revelation of newness. But still some good stuff. And then what is surprisingly, I thought this was going to be my favorite part, but surprisingly it's not, is the live concert, which closes out the thing starts on disc 3, finishes on disc 4, which is interesting because you actually could have fit everything onto disc. No, you couldn't. You would have run out of time. No, you could have actually fit it all, I think, on one disc. But then it would have pushed right up at the 79-minute mark. But you get the last show the Petit Wazoo tour band played. Opens up with the band introductions. Then we get a Little Dots, an 18-minute Little Dots, which I think just sounds better than the one that was released on Little Dots. I think the combo, the Parlato Gordon bass drums combo, that opening section when they're going at it just hits a little bit harder than it does on the Little Dots release. The solo section doesn't have that interesting change up that they have on Little Dots because it's Little Dots Part 1, Little Dots Part 2, but it's still a really nice whole bunch of solos in there. Just an awesome way to open a show. Like imagine opening a show, you go to see Frank and the first thing he plays is this 20-minute song that has this like drum bass crazy intro that almost sounds like an Ornette Coleman song. Just a stupidly good song. And then the rest of the show is on disc 4. We get an America Drinks, the big band arrangement version, similar to what you get on Zappa in New York. You get a Montana, which is a really nice intro. That's this weird like kind of creeping up intro. That's kind of a little more aggressive. It's not that that's not there yet. It's a different intro. We get the lyrics. Some of them are slightly different. We get a guitar solo, which is just like, as soon as it starts, Frank is done with it. We finish out the song, go back into that closing intro, get a Farther Oblivion, which is this epic song that was played in 72 and 73, which, if you don't know, starts off with what is the Stenopool section from Gregory Peccary, solo, what would become Bebop Tango, bunch of solos, and then we close out with Cucamonga, what would eventually be the music for Cucamonga, instrumental track. It's about 15 minutes long. We get a Cosmic Debris, some slightly different lyrics in Cosmic Debris, but again, it's Cosmic Debris essentially. But again, the solo is just like, what? Like, I mean, it's like, what, really? It's like almost like he doesn't care. interesting. And then we get Chunga's Revenge to close out, and it's essentially just, you know, the dun heavy version, get a solo, we go back into the dun more solos. I think Frank's best solo of the entire outing is probably his solo on here, though I do like his guitar work on Big Swifty. But yeah, really good. It says in the liner notes, of which the liner notes are really good in this thing. There's actually comments on each and every track. So if I make a mistake, it's probably because I didn't read the comments enough. But it does mention that somebody, I think Travers, read a newspaper article about the show, and they mentioned that there were 7 songs played, but they only have a recording of 6, so there might have been an encore, who knows. But all that they have has been released on here. So that is my second favorite thing on this disc, is that live show, which sounds great. Performances are great. Good set list. This is our first Chunga's Revenge. We had not had that from this tour. We had also not had an America Drinks from this tour, so those are new releases. But my favorite thing, and all of these look like this. It's all Frank, all of the little CD sleeves. So each thing is in its own sleeve, which is awesome. But my favorite disc, the one I've listened to by far the most, is disc 1. And these are the alternate takes of 7 songs from Waka Waka and Grand Wazoo. So, and I also think, yeah, some of these I think are better than the ones that were released. So the Your Mouth, which opens the entire box, opens up with like Sal Marquez and the female singer who is singing with Sal Marquez, Chris something, right, is her name? Cringe. No, it's not Janet. It's not. Who is it? Oh, it's Janet. Yeah, Janet Neville Ferguson. Or is it Lauren Wood? I don't know. But whoever is doing the female vocals, Chris Peterson. Yeah, Chris Peterson. That's what it is. That's a female, right? I don't know. But whoever's doing the female vocals with Sal Marquez, they're kind of joking back and forth beginning of it. Like kind of, you know, like studio pitter patter. And then we go into the song and it works well. Like I really wish Frank had one more song for Waka Jawaka, so that because this is Your Mouth, and then we go right into an alternate take of Big Swifty, and that would have been an incredible way to open up that album. Or I wish we had Big Swifty on side 1, and then Your Mouth, this version with the studio pitter patter, had opened up side 2, because it just works. It works incredibly well. So the Your Mouth is good. Feels a little more bluesier, more of just like a jam song, and like this kind of studio cobbled together type piece. Big Swifty alternate take, which is fantastic. Everybody gets a chance to solo. It really is just a chance where Duke gets a little bit of solo, then it's the drummer, then Tony, then Sal, then Frank. The solos aren't that long, but the rhythm section does a good job of kind of like between the solos when, like, you know, George is finishing and the drummers are coming in, or Tony's finishing and Sal's coming in. During that like part when they're merging, or like, you know, one's getting off and one's getting on, the percussion and the drummer and the rhythm section kind of mix things up a little, so everything feels just, it has this really neat cohesive feel where it doesn't just feel like a series of solos, but does feel like this somewhat amorphous jam. It just feels really good. Really good version of this. I don't know if it's better than the officially released version. I think because the sound is so good, it feels a little better. That transition after the main theme, when they're done doing the that part, reminds me of the transition of the Grateful Dead after they're done with the playing in the band and they're going to head off into, like, you know, 15 minutes of space. It has that sort of amorphous kind of floating feel, like, where are we going now? And I really like that. It's a sort of Frank letting loose the controls in a way that he doesn't normally. You know, it feels like the band is in charge and not Frank, which is not a feel you get a lot of the time. Then we get a version of Eat That Question called Minimal Art, which just starts off, I think this is the one of them just starts off with the main theme. We don't get that Duke keyboard intro, but we get a Sal Marquez trumpet solo, and it is utterly fantastic. 10-minute version. I kind of wish this one had been the one that was released. It's really good. I like it. We get a version of Blessed Relief, with this pretty much the same song, but with different solos. We get a version of the Grand Wazoo called Think It Over with vocals. It sounds like Frank wrote the Grand Wazoo and later decided to put vocals in it, and the vocals just literally lay right across the melody, lay right on top of the melody that is already there. I don't think the vocals add anything to it. I don't think they're helpful. They were part of a science fiction musical called Hutch and Toot that Frank wrote. Some of the songs with vocals, or some of the songs without vocals, later appeared on Sleep Dirt, and then later Frank released the vocal versions. But that was part of that, and the vocals don't help. The instrumental version of this is better. For Calvin and his next two Hitchhikers, we get an instrumental version, and for the most, and it is a little bit rickety. You get some like sort of production interruption from Frank at a couple points. There's some stopping and starting that isn't present in the final mix. It has a definitely more ramshackle version, like just feels a little more rickety and not together, but it works. It's neat. I like that. I like frayed ends in Zappa's music. Oh, and the Grand Wazoo in the middle of the jam, Frank is obviously conducting the band as there's a part where they stop and then things get crazy and then they stop again and things get crazy and then Frank releases them and they're off into the solo section. So it feels live. It feels like, yeah, this was a live take that we are getting. And then the CD one closes out with Waka Jawaka. Maybe my favorite thing on this release. It is Waka Jawaka, but it does not have that melody, that horn melody line that comes when the song starts. That dun dun dun, that part. It's just the bass, the guitar setting up sort of the groove, and then Sal Marquez is the first soloist, and we're just off into solo land. Nice lengthy drum solo at the end, but yeah, I like this version. Like, the main theme is not needed. It's never been one of my favorite themes. I like the song, but that bass part alone is enough to make this like absolutely essential. And it just feels so much, it feels so loose and so free and so Frank just letting the band be the band. I don't know. Feels absolutely fantastic. And it's a great way to end the first CD, which is my favorite CD on here. So, love this release. I highly recommend it. Unless you hate trumpet, unless you hate good music, unless you hate keyboards, unless you hate ridiculous rhythm sections, unless you need vocals. Like, this is a fantastic release. I listened to Zappa Eerie again last night, particularly the Fall 74 show, to see where I would rank this. And I think I would rank this... I think I would put this above the Wazoo show, which was number 6, now number 7. I think that I would put this at 4 or 5. This is a fantastic release. Obviously, I've only had it for 3 weeks. That may change, but the first disc alone, if that was the only thing that was released, I would probably still put it in my top 10 because it is just one of the most happiest, joyful listening experiences I've had in a long time, and I love it. But yeah, it's a top 10 release out of the 60 plus that he's released so far. That's where I would put it. Sounds good. The packaging is good. The book is good. The price was reasonable. Everything about this, I support and I agree with and I love. And thank you, ZFT, for releasing this. This is an awesome release. But that's all I got for today. Thank you for watching. If you let me know what you think about this, comment below. Tell me what I messed up on. Tell me why. What did I complain about? Did I complain about anything? Yeah. Tell me what I'm missing in the new mix of it. Might just be a one-shot deal that will make me love this even more. But yeah, fantastic, man. 30 minutes talking about, yeah, awesome. I recommend it. I think it's a great release. But thanks for watching. Comment, subscribe, like, share. You know how it works, people. And Happy New Year. Talk to you later. Peace.